Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. It is my fault there's no video this week. Traveling early because of the strange Christmas. I guess it's the way it just laid out in the calendar. So I didn't actually grab my camera stuff. So we are just doing the audio only. The show will be broadcast same time as always, Tuesday night. You just won't have a video feed. We're recording this ahead of time for travel and stuff like that. But it's going to be a mess because we have, New Year's Eve next Tuesday as well. So the live stream's probably going to be finicky at best, but we'll see how that shakes out just due to the holidays. So just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and hopefully those holidays are going well out there because we'll probably be celebrating when this is posted. But got to get right into the football stuff. The Jets upset the Steelers. I talked about it. I knew it was going to happen. That's a kind of loss that the Steelers have been doing. It feels like the past couple of years. They lose to a team they're not supposed to lose to, but you felt it coming. And to be honest, I don't feel it is a head coach issue at this point because it became very clear it was a quarterback issue. You're down to your third string quarterback. He starts the game, and he plays horrific. And I've been giving him the benefit of the doubt. And I understand that at this point in the season, they have to kind of open up the playbook a bit. But he also has to make better reads and better decisions down the stretch. Because they put in Rudolph, he creates a spark. And the one thing that pissed me off with travel is you can't watch the game in your regular environment. So I couldn't really hear some of the commentators. But the one thing that I didn't understand was why Rudolph was injured, why he didn't come back into the game. So I'm trying to read through all of the ticker, the news ticker, and they just said that he had an injury, unknown, and that he was seen doing a fake throwing motion on the sideline. And to me, I'm thinking you are trying to win the starting position for an NFL team. You have been benched. You came in, you threw a touchdown. You are the hope for the Steelers right now. He had to have been seriously injured, out for the rest of the year injured, to not play through a little bit of discomfort. Otherwise, what are you doing? What are you trying to do instead of getting in the game and earning your spot? If I'm the GM, why would I sign you for a long-term deal? Why would I bring you back? What are you fighting for? I mean, did you hear anything on that injury, Matt? I tried to look today. I didn't see anything big.
I saw it was just a shoulder injury, but it didn't really speculate the severity. It was just his shoulder's hurt, and it must have been injured enough that he wanted to not come back into the game. But, you hit the nail on the head. They're playing the Jets, and it was a game that they easily should have won. And here you go. You can't even move the ball. Once again, it was the defense potentially bailing them out. They were down, and it took the strip sack to get them into scoring position. And I thought it was a very sloppy game. With the way that it was just predictable, deep throws. They weren't making the plays that they made. And granted, I know we talked about it last week, where you're looking at playing with your second and third string quarterbacks. But let's be honest, Roethlisberger's speculating that he might not be back next year. So if he's not there, this is what you're looking for. Does Pittsburgh? Do they need to go out and address quarterback via free agency or through the draft, do you think?
Well, I'm telling you, just for listeners out there, we're doing this ahead of time. I would assume that he's out for the rest of the year, Rudolph. So he's out. We don't know for sure yet. But by the time you're hearing this, you'll probably know. But my guess is that he's out for the rest of the year. So you have Hodges. You've already been blocked on 2 XFL quarterbacks. You have a chance for the playoffs. This is your audition. I mean, what do you have to do? You're going to have to trade up and draft a quarterback. Yeah, I mean, you could try for free agency, and there are a couple guys that I think that would work well in Pittsburgh. But at this point, if you're Ben, he can't have the locker room. This is a young core. There's been rumors about Ben losing the locker room, not having those guys anymore. He's kind of out of touch. You think, okay, he's a vet. Maybe he doesn't really need that type of locker room control if he's able to connect with his receivers as he has done in the past. Even with the guys like Antonio Brown, they still put up outrageous numbers even though they had a locker room rift. You don't have to be 100% on unless you're like in a rebuild situation like they are right now. Maybe he thinks that's it. Is he going to retire? Is he going to move on? I don't know at this point. But if you're the Steelers, you can't be happy with your quarterback room. I mean, 3-4 weeks ago, when the Steelers were riding hot, everyone thought, okay, you got Duck. That's going to be the quarterback going forward. Now he's been figured out. We've talked about it on the show. When you're a quarterback, you get 10 to 12 games on you. And I don't even think it's been that much for him. Coaches learn your tendencies. That's why they usually have the sophomore slump. He's facing his now, which makes me think that he just doesn't have it. Like, he's not going to be a long-term quarterback because you have to make those adjustments. Yeah, you could have had one bad week, but you're not having your bad week against the Patriots. You're having your bad weeks against the Jets. Teams that you should be shredding. I mean, that's not even a joke.
But you know, you say that, but you also have to take this into consideration that those are also the games that Roethlisberger would throw 2 and 3 interceptions in, and you'd go, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, this is a game that we should soundly win, and that they limp along with it. So I mean, it's kind of the standard that you're gonna play these games, and it's almost a repeat of last year, where now you come down to the last week where you're in a gotta win situation.
It might not even happen. Luckily, I don't know if these reports are completely valid because it's early, but the Ravens aren't going to play their starters. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's been an official report yet. It probably will be by Tuesday, but at least Lamar Jackson's not going to play. So you're going to have to face RG3, a former Heisman winner himself. So it's not like you're getting a scrub quarterback or like some fourth-string quarterback. You're going to get a solid game from the Ravens, but you're going to have a lot of their starters not playing. I mean, I don't know what happened to Ingram. Did you see that fake handoff where he botched it and probably blew his knee out? I don't know if that actually was like a ACL or something. But
yeah, that didn't look good.
Lamar Jackson pulled it out very late, and he thought it was going to be a fumble, Mark Ingram, so you could tell that he like tried to catch himself, put all his weight on his knee, and it buckled. It looked bad. And then he tried to get up. And so I thought, okay, maybe he just tweaked it a little bit, but then he fell right back down. So I thought, oh, that's bad. Going into the playoffs, you have a young quarterback, and I mean, it's not like the Steelers are going to stop him, but it's not going to matter. The Ravens aren't going to play. You have a chance. You're going to win. Steelers could still back into the playoffs, Matt. That's how ridiculous this is. I was looking at the scenarios, and I think these are the ones that are set after all of the games that were played. I hope I didn't miss anything, but you have the Steelers. If they win, they really need the Titans to lose. So if they win, the Titans lose. Or the Titans can lose and the Steelers lose, but the Colts win and Oakland loses. Or if that doesn't happen, then you have a whole bunch of other scenarios where it goes to the strength of victory. So the Steelers would need the Colts basically to win if they lose, and then the Bears, Lions, Chargers, and New England all to lose, or something crazy. So there are other ways where you might think that's never going to happen. But a Colts win and a Raiders loss could 100% happen. The Titans could 100% lose. They're playing the Texans. I think that division's locked up, although I could be wrong. But you're looking at a situation where, okay, It's a rival. They want to keep them out of the playoffs because right now the Texans have to be thinking, keep them out of the playoffs, put us in a situation to play possibly the Steelers. They've been playing awful. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So the Steelers could back into the playoffs with Duck Hodges being figured out, and that would just be a complete beatdown. Because I was excited for the playoffs already, but now I'm not.
I think it could, in true Pittsburgh fashion, it can go one of two ways. And I think some of the pressure is off of them per se, because they don't. It's not like last year. I felt like they were in a situation where you didn't want them to make the playoffs. Like it was almost a blessing in disguise because they were in a spot then that they were able to move up without losing a whole lot to draft Devin Bush. This year, make the playoffs. It doesn't matter. You don't have a first-round pick anyhow. You gave it away. So regardless of what that pick looks like, you're not. It's not hurting your value for the draft at all by doing that. So have at it. And once you get in, there's an outside chance that for as good as the defense plays, depending on where they're at, they could potentially be in a spot where they can do it. To me, the issue right now that's really hurting Pittsburgh is that the running back situation has just been awful. That's been a major disappointment, and I know that they've been on a carousel of Connor's been hurt like all the time, and like Samuel's inconsistent, like Snell inconsistent. They've gotten like I think they've marched everyone and their brother out on the field trying to get them to establish some kind of run game. That's been the issue with Rudolph and with Hodges is that they don't have a ground game that they can rely on. You know, you don't have to put as much on the quarterback when you can consistently run the ball. And when they have two All-Pros and as much money as they've invested in offensive linemen over the last couple of years, they should just be running people over.
You can look at that, but I think at this point they know that they can bait the Steelers quarterbacks into bad throws, and so they're just stacking the box. So as much as I want to see them run the ball successfully, I think at this point it is impossible unless they figure something out. Because, I mean, you had Juju, he came out and apologized that the Jets' loss was on him. The final throw, okay, Hodges dropped the ball. I'm like, how many times are you going to drop the ball in the last 3 minutes of the game? People make fun of Tom Brady being old. Tom Brady would never drop the ball like that a bunch of times. I mean, like the previous series, he like fumbled it and like ran out and then got sacked. The very last play of the game, you need to be focused on the ball. You're just playing scared at that point. Hold on to the ball when it's snapped to you. That's your number one job. So he picks it up and just throws it up. And I thought, holy crap, he's a chance to complete this for a split second. And what happens? Juju jumped so early that it made it look like he had no chance to catch the ball. But if you watch the replay, he's so close to catching that ball, I don't know what he was doing. And he apologized for it and said that he cost them the game. Because he said he planned on, if he would have caught that ball, he could have walked into the end zone. Which, okay, I don't think that would have happened because the defender was right there. But catch the ball and give your team a couple shots with a couple, like 40 seconds left or whatever was on the clock. Instead, it made me think, I know he's been out too, but at some point, you have to be able to make that. To me, that's not even an athletic play. Like, to know the timing of the pass. Like, yeah, he just fluttered it up there, but I think anyone that played backyard football should be able to time up a jump for a jump ball to at least get a hand on it. Not jump 5 seconds early and then, like, you're landing when the ball's coming down.
In his defense, though, he didn't have his cameraman there to tell him, hey, this is the time to jump. When you spend all your time working with your Instagram photographer or videographer, it's tough to make those decisions when you don't have your hype man behind you.
Matt, to be honest, that's the one thing that I always talk about on the show, and I feel like it might annoy people. Like talking about how coaches are in commercials. Look at all the commercials Jim Harbaugh and Nick Saban did this year. They're meeting in the Citrus Bowl. Do you think that's a coincidence? Did you see Ryan Day doing any commercials? No, he did zero. I mean, that's pretty much...
But he's also not very photogenic.
True. But if you're winning, you get those opportunities. I mean, look at Coach O. You can barely understand him. He even had car commercials at Ole Miss. He was awful there. So you can get the commercials if you want to do them. All you need to do is tell people to buy cars at your dealership. But, come on. Any other receiver I felt like would have had a handle on that ball. And at first I was like, oh, he flipped up to the middle. Maybe it'll be Washington or Johnson. But then I saw Smith-Schuster. I was like, that's not a catch. I just knew going into that he wasn't going to make a play. And that's sad. That's supposed to be your number one receiver. And if you're building a young team...
and I think that's the issue, too, is that they're building this as Juju being the number one. And I just don't think that he's good in that role. I think he's a good receiver. I think he's cost Pittsburgh some games, but I think overall he's a good receiver. But he's not a number one. And when you look at all the other injuries that they've had, that really hurts because not only is he not a number one, but then he's missed significant playing time as well. So that's like a double whammy. And I think he was much better when they had him playing in the slot and that he was able to move around and use his speed to his advantage in some of those underneath and crossing routes. I don't know that he's filling this number one role as good as what he should.
It goes beyond that. He just has to be reliable. I don't see how anyone, you don't even have to put a number on it. But if you're looking just in the past 2 years, he single-handedly could have lost the Steelers 2 playoff bids. Last year, he fumbles against the Saints.
Yep.
This year, I saw it mentioned in his apology article, he had fumbled against the Ravens. A lot of people were giving me shit about that, saying that he lost the Ravens game. He fumbled at midfield. They only needed a field goal to win. The Ravens get the ball, make one first down and kick a field goal, they win. I mean, it's pretty simple. He cost them that game. You don't fumble that. You have the ball at the 50-yard line. Worst case scenario, you punt and pin them deep. Not give them the ball right near field goal range. And then this game, if he wants to count it as I thought you at least get your hands on the ball. I don't know. That was such an embarrassing jump that, if I was his personal trainer, I would just put that on loop all off season. Look at that. Shouldn't you be working out a little bit harder? Come on, let's get the jug machine. I'll pop some balls up to you. Do something. Because that's embarrassing for a guy that has touted himself as the number one receiver. And yeah, you put yourself in the spotlight on social media and all that stuff. You deserve it. You deserve to be criticized. Don't give me your pout. Last year you cried and said, oh, it hurts so bad every time. Every time you say the same exact thing about how it hurts so bad. Just do your job. Come on, how many other NFL wide receivers would jump so early for a ball? It's like high school stuff. It's mind-boggling. I don't even have anything else to say. Do you have anything else on the Steelers?
The one thing that I thought earlier in the year it was annoying, but listening to Mark Madden's take on Juju and his social media issues, I thought that he was hard on Juju and piling on in the heels of the Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell situations. He really went after him aggressively with how he's spending so much more time focused on his social media following as opposed to focusing on being a good football player. And as the season's progressed, I got to give credit where credit's due. I think when you're missing games and it's game time decision type stuff, and you're spending too much time playing video games and doing everything else, I mean, it's no different than what we were dealing with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. So I think it's a good thing that he's getting called out sooner for it, and hopefully he looks in the mirror this offseason and recognizes if he wants to have the influence that be a good football player, do your job first, and the branding and other stuff will come later. Was actually surprised at the end of the game to see Le'Veon Bell kind of taking a different approach with with seeing him posting like stuff about being with the Steelers, and like it was a well thought of message that when you see like the nonsense that he did earlier in the year and how the Jets were shopping him around, he had a game. He played well enough to get the Jets to win, and just kind of humbly just posted and did his thing. I thought it was a different take at the end of the game compared to some of the antics that you've seen over the last couple months with Antonio Brown.
Matt, I don't even care about people talking trash. Antonio Brown, if you're going to do that, talk as much trash as possible, but back it up. Juju's just fumbling, doing all kinds of stupid stuff, and you're not even doing anywhere near the numbers that Antonio Brown did. If you had like the third most receptions in a season, then yeah, eat your heart out. Go out there and do all that stuff.
But look at all that trash talking that Antonio Brown did. What did it get him? Now, like, nobody wants to touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Well, I understand that, but at least if you're going to, do you think Antonio Brown would have jumped super early for that ball? He would have made that catch.
Well, it would have been hard to jump because he still has the frostbite on his feet.
He would have made that catch, and he would have made that catch. And Juju's right. Antonio Brown probably would have scored a touchdown. Maybe some other receiver would have caught that and scored a touchdown. I bet it would be Antonio Brown would be one of them. Because that's the kind of guy that makes plays. And then after that, if you're going to disrupt the locker room or whatever, then go ahead and take it that far. But, at least make the Steelers exciting to watch and not be painful. And Bell, you're right. He did turn it around. And I think he's realizing as the season went on, he signed with the Jets. He tried to make it look like he came out on top. I'm sure on social media people just hammered him with the hard numbers like, bro, you blew it. You blew yourself millions of dollars. There's no way you can spin it that you won. Now you're on the Jets. They are awful. If you were still on the Steelers, you could be the guy. And without a quarterback, you'd be an even bigger star right now if you led them to the playoffs. Because I don't think he gets hurt like Connor. I guess he's been hurt.
I don't think he gets hurt like Connor, and I think if he still stays and he takes so much pressure off of either quarterback that we're not having the issues that we're having right now, because you can rely heavily on your running back, get yourself the typical field goals that Pittsburgh hammers out, and they're winning a lot of these as opposed to losing.
Yeah, because right now he has to be realizing that, he went to New York, a bigger market. He just beat the Steelers, and he's going to get no press because of it. Because everyone right now, all the articles are going to be about the Titans and Steelers battling for the last playoff spot. If you're nowhere near that and you're not even putting up gigantic numbers, no one's going to talk about you. So he pretty much screwed himself. Like, if you're going to make a move like that and come out and be humbled, you might as well try to sign with the Patriots. Or like right now, Seahawks. They're trying to bring back Marshawn Lynch. I don't know if it will happen by the time this launches, but I think they've reached out for some comments. I don't know if Pete Carroll or who, but someone's leaked that they're going to try to sign him for the playoffs. And I think that's a good move.
That's a great move. That might be the move Tom Brady does. Just sit out the regular season and then come in fresh for the playoffs. He could play till he's 90.
Everyone's been talking about Gronk doing that. And then there was like a big countdown. I forget one of the shows where like he ended up on NFL Countdown or something. I forget why I even watch shows like that. But like Gronk came out and was like doing these comedy bits, and I was like, what is this? But then they were like, yeah, he missed the deadline. Now he's on the show. And I'm like, I don't care. What insight is he giving me? Is he Bill Belichick? No. Gronk's not going to be able to break down the game. They haven't missed a beat with him there. It really doesn't matter. They're still going to win the division, or at least come close to winning it. Did they beat the Bills yesterday?
They did beat the Bills.
So they did clinch it.
Barely.
It doesn't matter. Just win in the playoffs. Tom Brady could win. Well, people made fun of him for winning that Super Bowl last year, 10-3 or something? Whatever it was. It's like, it doesn't matter. Does he get the ring? Are you going to remember the score of every Super Bowl? Most people do not. They just know Tom Brady won another one. So, win 3-0. Like that, I would take that. If the Steelers were to make the playoffs and somehow just coast through and win a Super Bowl with scores like 6-3, I think most people would be happy.
Do nothing. Get a safe. The defense will force a safe.
Hey, anything. I think the Seahawks making moves like that is what's going to put them over the edge. But the Rams, everyone was knocking them. I thought they had a decent season, but whenever you were in the Super Bowl last year, you have to be able to make that jump. I just think that the 49ers right now, Shanahan has things clicking, and I'm surprised that they're in contention for. I mean, I guess there's 3 teams battling for the number 1 seed right now, isn't it? The Seahawks, Saints, and Niners. Well, Green Bay hasn't played yet, so I don't know what their record would be if they win and the tiebreakers, if all those teams lose. But the NFC is looking like a crazy juggernaut. Then you have all the AFC teams just kind of fluttering around. Chiefs like, oh, we might win some games. We might have some head-scratching losses. Plus, we have Andy Reid, so we'll probably blow it sometime. Then you have, like, the Patriots. It's like, is Tom Brady going to even quarterback? What's going to happen with them? It's like total opposites. And you know what's going to happen. An AFC team's going to win the Super Bowl. Because you have all these NFC teams that are going to beat each other up. And then everyone's going to bet on them heavily, Matt. Whoever comes out of the NFC is probably going to be the favorite. And they're going to blow it to like a Tom Brady or like a crazy team like Deshaun Watson will have the Texans win the Super Bowl or something. That's my prediction.
You say that, but I was surprised that the Texans won the division.
Why not? Bill O'Brien's a hell of a coach. People give James Franklin a bunch of like, oh yeah, look how great James Franklin's doing. Bill O'Brien saved the Penn State program. If they were going to build a statue to anyone after Jopa, they need to build the Bill O'Brien statue. Without his recruiting and keeping the guys that he had and putting out winning seasons with heavy sanctions, like you got to be kidding me. I don't know why you wouldn't give that guy credit to saving that program. Because if he's not there, James Franklin comes in with a completely empty cupboard. And I don't know if he can ever get things going.
Well, with O'Brien, I know that one of the issues that he had was that he was frustrated with boosters. Like anything that he was trying to do to upgrade the facilities or the program, they were coming back and saying, that's not the way Joe would do it. So like he just got down with everything. So finally he just got tired of it and went back to the NFL.
Yeah, and he's built his team. I mean, it's not his fault that his quarterback gets injured. And they really didn't have a lot of talent around him when he first got there. But he consistently has had, at least similar to like what other top coaches have had, 8 seasons or whatever. I don't remember them ever being like a top number 1 pick. Maybe I'm wrong whenever he was there, but he's always had solid defense. It just seemed like whenever he got a quarterback that could stay healthy, he could call a game to get them to win some games, and that's what's happened. And they could come out of that to the conference. I don't know. I don't see any reason why not. Everyone thought the Titans were hot. They shut them down, win the division. I don't see any reason for them to be more negative than any other team in the AFC right now. I don't think one more thing I have for the NFL though. There's some rumors going around that the Panthers might be interested in Mike McCarthy. Why? I talked about the circle of shit with Jason Garrett and how the Cowboys were interested in Ron Rivera. How dumb would it be of them to get Mike McCarthy? The exact same coach, except he has 1 Super Bowl. 1.
He has a Super Bowl. He could wear his ring.
Matt, at that point, hire Jimmy Johnson. Hire some other coach that won Super Bowl decades ago. It's been, a decade? That has been a long time. You're not hiring some young stud coming in that's going to blow up the NFL and innovate everything. You're just going back to the things that didn't work. Why would you do that? David Tepper, you just got an MLS team out of nowhere. You're going full of, looked like you had a winning hand. Everything's coming up aces. And what happened? you're talking about Mike McCarthy? What are you doing? It's embarrassing. That's the kind of thing that if the Steelers fired Tomlin and they hired Jason Garrett, I'd be like, what the hell? That's Matt, that's the exact same scenario that Panthers fans are looking at right now. Do you have any positives you can think of?
Other than with McCarthy, he's an offensive-minded coach, and not that Garrett isn't, but I think sometimes just getting a fresh face in, and even only won one Super Bowl, to be able to say, "Hey, I did win," and with the year that the time that he's spent off, he's been shown that he's still meeting with coaches to go over film and to talk different game plans. So it's not like he's he's completely out of the game. So I think it's not. You could do worse. I mean, I know it kind of flies in the face of your line of thinking with trying to get someone fresh. But if you're Dallas, I just don't know if you break the bank trying to bring in a college coach who doesn't have the experience.
Well, you know who's petitioning for the job?
Probably your boy Herbs.
It is Urban. Did you see that? He's been saying random things on his broadcasts and his breakdowns about how the Dallas Cowboys are the ultimate football head coaching job and things like that. So I don't know if he's just toying with people, but they have his boy Zeke there at running back. He did great things with him. So I wouldn't be 100% shocked if he went to the NFL. I mean, think about it. We talked about USC. They almost fell apart. I mean, we should talk about it. I don't have it on the video. Maybe I can add it in after. But college recruiting day, so college signing day, USC was last in the Pac-12. Clay Helton had to 100% think he was getting fired. Why else would he have the worst class in the Pac-12? You were located in LA. So for whatever reason, they didn't sign Urban Meyer. They had talked to him. I mean, they made it pretty clear that they were going to talk to him. And I would assume those conversations happened. But what if Urban also talked to Jerry Jones?
It's not that crazy of an idea.
I know. He's at Fox. All the Cowboys games are on Fox. They have the NFC deal. He's been flying around whatever. Jerry Jones is probably doing whatever. I wouldn't be shocked if it just came out and they went to the Cowboys. And if you're the Cowboys, that's a home run hire. He has one of the highest winning percentages in college football of all time. He's won at every school he's been at. If you're going to hire a college coach, Matt, someone just hired Cliff Kingsbury. Someone just hired Cliff Kingsbury.
I know, and they're going to soon be throwing buckets of money at Lincoln Riley too.
Yeah, Matt, Lincoln Riley is a class above Cliff Kingsbury. He was averaging 6 wins. That's 500% in college at a school that Mike Leach had built into a winning program. He destroyed it, and people still hired him for millions of dollars. At least if you're getting Urban Meyer, that's the home run of home runs of all college coaches. I could see Lincoln Riley, but he's topped out. If Oklahoma gets bounced the first round of the playoffs again, do you really think the Big 12 should be getting an auto bid every year? At that point, it's why not invite Utah or whatever other conference and give them a shot if Oklahoma is just going to lose every year in the first round? So, at least with Urban, he's won national championships, 2 different schools. You could even count 3 if you count the undefeated season at Utah. I mean, give it to him. So if the Cowboys, who else are you going to hire that's a college coach? The only one that's had, success? Harbaugh. He hasn't even been doing great by Michigan standards, so it's not like that would be a home run hire. Who else are you going to bring back? Herm Edwards? He's been doing pretty good, but I don't know. You could do worse in terms of college coaches. That's all I'm saying. So if you're a Cowboys fan, I'd be pumped.
I would just hold off because Saban was heralded when he went to the NFL after winning at LSU, and you saw how that went with Miami.
Yeah, but he also didn't win. Like, he didn't have a great record at Michigan State either. So I always felt like he was a bit of a fraud in terms of like his legacy and people naming him the greatest coach of all time. If he was so great, how come he didn't do as well as Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State? Like, I understand you hit like your little skids. Like, Pete Carroll didn't start off that hot. He figured things out. But for all we know, Nick Saban, his big thing could just be out recruiting everybody. Like, if you said, oh, he's the greatest recruiter of all time, I would say, okay, I see that. But is he the greatest coach? What stop has he out-coached anyone? He's only won when he's had more talent. That's it.
But I guess there is something to getting talent in place.
Yeah, that's true. But like I said, if you're going to put it, I mean, look at Dabo. He's been winning national championships with around the 10th rated composite. Nick Saban, he's only won whenever he's like the number one. He drops because Georgia and Ohio State jumped them. They're not even in the playoffs this year. Like, what's going to happen if that keeps happening? Clemson has the number one class overall. Alabama's not going to jump in that consideration because he's already been outcoached by Dabo, a team that had lesser talent. I mean, is he ever going to get that type of recruiting class? Hell, like, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be shocked. He was rumored to Texas before, and this is if he stays coaching. Or hell, what if he ended up in USC? There would be no discussion against him having the number one recruiting class. He could just have anyone he wanted in LA at that point. Who do you really have to beat? Just Oregon? He would have the most talent in the Pac-12, and people would put him in the playoffs no matter what because he's at USC. That would be a crazy twist. If Alabama fans, because you know they're crazy and they're talking about firing him after missing the playoffs, which is unheard of.
That's insane.
Yeah. I think I saw someone put a billboard out or a full-page newspaper ad or something about trying to fire him. I'm like, you missed the playoffs once. There are hundreds of teams that haven't made it once. You want to get rid of them? That's like, that would be the craziest. Urban goes to the Cowboys. Saban goes to USC. I would just shake my head. Especially if Alabama was able to sway Dabo to come to Alabama then at that point. It would be like a Barzaro world of coaching moves. But I don't know. Crazy things haven't happened. Big game Bob didn't go to Florida State. I know that much. Anything else you got for the NFL?
No.
All right. Got a little bit of high tempo here. I'll kick mine off first because I don't want to forget it, and it's not really a big topic. But France wants to increase the number of Women's World Cup tournaments. It goes every 4 years right now, and they want to bring it to every other year. So every 2 years you would have Women's World Cup. And the Men's World Cup, I think, is opposite. Is it opposite of the Olympics where it's 2 years is Olympics, then next 2 years there's a World Cup, so it's every 4 years reality, and it alternates with the Olympics. I think that's how it works out. So Women's World Cup, you could just do the alternating years. And I think it would fill out a lot of the national sports things. So it's hard to explain this on audio, but it would go Women's World Cup, Olympics. Women's World Cup, Men's World Cup. Women's World Cup, Olympics. Blah, blah. I just keep going in that pattern. And I think that would make for a hell of a summer every year because you would have like a national tournament that everyone in the United States would care about. And hell, with the Women's World Cup, the United States can keep racking up wins. It's pretty much our best international sport. Are we getting the most gold medals anymore? No. China gets them all, or Russia, or whoever else is doping. Hell, they're not even letting Russia compete anymore.
Dudes.
What'd you say?
Hey. I said, until Russia just fields a team of dudes, and then they're like, no, we're women now.
They're kicked out, though. They banned them. I think they're reviewing it again, but it feels like every year they're talking about them being on steroids. Like, have you not seen Rocky IV? We've known that since the 80s. I feel like just let those teams dope. And if that's what they can throw out there, because you can't convince me that the United States isn't doing it. How do I know we're just not cutting edge? I've seen some of our athletes. When you have women's tennis players that are as big as Ray Lewis, Matt, that's not natural. I'm sorry. So, I don't know. I thought that was a cool tidbit. What do you got for high tempo this year? Or this week? Jesus.
This week, it's a twofold. Number one, I saw Kendall Browse was signed and hired by Arkansas. So as they're transitioning into a new staff, he's going to coach the bowl game, and then he'll be out at Florida State. And then also, former Florida State coaches Jimbo Fisher wanted to remind the A&M players of their loss to LSU. So what better way to do that than to use the code for their locker room to be 50-7 so that they can be reminded of how bad LSU whipped them this year.
Hey, that's a good thing. I don't even have anything to say about that. Motivate college players any way that you can. I saw there was one of the old video guys for Michigan. He did I guess he has his own company now, but he was part of the recruiting process as we talked about signing day. And I guess he was hired at freelance to help Ohio State. And he said that Ohio State was on a different level. And everyone was worried about, well, that's Michigan. He must mean talent and all this stuff. But if you actually look at the video of the post, it was Ohio State had an entire board. And I don't know their facility, but it was dedicated to the game. They had the countdown clock. They had videos playing of Ohio State winning the game against Michigan for all these years. And I just thought Michigan doesn't have anything like that. They need to just take it seriously if you're going to tell me, because if you look at signing day, the talent gap isn't extraordinary. It's not if you're looking at the gaps between other teams, Auburn has just as big of a gap behind Alabama, and they beat Alabama at a better pop than what Michigan's beaten Ohio State. I mean, hell, Purdue just beat Ohio State last year. They whipped them. Their talent's so low, it's not even on the charts, Matt. It's not a talent deficiency. At some point, like I said, you have to plan for the teams you're playing. Instead of scheduling Army and Air Force and all these stupid teams that run option, you need to be scheduling teams that run the same exact offense as Ohio State so that you can practice for them 12 weeks out of the year. I mean, that's exactly what Penn State's kind of been doing, trying to do that same exact thing. They had the thing with Pitt, though. I'm not saying that that's the reason why they lost to Ohio State, but they're able to play Ohio State much closer, and their talent gap is worse than Michigan's. They've been behind Michigan by a couple spots every year. I mean, their class, I was looking at Penn State's recruiting class, and I've been watching them. I thought they had a chance to finish first in the Big Ten, and I don't know what happened. I know they had an issue last year with transfers, but they ended up on this initial signing day third. They fell out of the top 10. Ohio State ended up number 1, which a lot of people thought, okay, they're in the Big Ten, a brand new head coach, they're going to fall off. But when you go undefeated as a first-year head coach, you're not going to lose a lot of recruits that were signed to the previous coach. I think a lot of Big Ten coaches were hoping that Urban Meyer came back. If he would have came and signed with USC, I think Ryan Day would have lost a bunch of recruits, but it didn't happen. So Ohio State's number 1, Michigan finished second, and then Penn State's behind them. So you're going to have the same exact talent gap that you had the past couple years. It's going to be the exact same for Penn State and Michigan trying to dethrone Ohio State. So if Ryan Day wants to keep building, I mean, he's doing it in recruiting right now. Unbelievable job and great way to step in as a first-year coach and get it done. What did you think of signing day? Anything stood out to you?
One of the things was the amount of players that still are going to be up for grabs in the second part of it, because we had talked before about how the majority of the players were going to be committed early. I think it's kind of slowed down a little bit because of the transfer portal and being able to kind of get yourself out there from school to school a little bit easier. So I think that is something that's helping some of these players, is if you can focus. I think coaches can be a little bit more patient with players, knowing that as coaches leave, as players move different stuff, that there's going to be more options. For example, I saw with Florida State bringing on a new offensive line coach immediately, one of the recruits for TCU had decommitted and had picked up an offer from Florida State. So I think it helps in some aspects too that you're already recruited. The coaches that are coming in are able to kind of pull some of those recruits that they've already been working with and have the relationship with.
Matt, did you look at the ACC rankings?
Clemson and everyone else, I'm assuming.
Oh, but I was just looking to see if you knew is it number 2 and number 3? Who are the top 3 schools?
The top 3
in the ACC, yeah.
I would say as much as I hate to say it, it's probably Miami number 2. And then just a team of players that decommitted from Miami would probably be 3. Because they had 19 decommitments and 19 commitments. The people that had decommitted would have been rated the 15th class ahead of their 18th ranked class.
Well, you were spot on with number 2. Number 3, Matt, is not Florida State. It's old Mack Brown talking about recycling coaches at UNC. So almost beating Clemson.
He put together a really good staff with Longo and Brewster. He has some good recruiters there on staff.
I mean, he's definitely turning the program around. If you're going to turn around to compete to win that division, because think about it, Florida State has to face Clemson. They're in the same division. UNC has to just beat Miami and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech hasn't been recruiting well.
They have to beat everyone because the Coastals decide where everyone has won it.
Recently. Yeah, but I'm saying Mack Brown could distance himself, Matt. Their biggest competitors historically are going to be Miami and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech right now is 13th in the ACC. They just got a late signee to jump ahead of Boston College. They would have been last. Can you imagine? Frank Beamer built that program up, and you're battling Boston College for last place, a team without a head coach.
But that doesn't surprise me, because going into the season, you knew Bud Foster was in his last year. And so when you know that there's going to be that kind of – teams are going to negatively recruit like crazy against you.
Yeah, but he wasn't even the head coach.
But it doesn't matter. When you have someone that's been there that long like him, that's providing stability and continuity, just like towards the end of Bobby Bowden's tenure, he was one that people were negatively recruiting him, saying, oh, well, he's going to be leaving. You're not going to be playing for him. But I like the way that Norvell talked to some of the recruits and said basically, don't commit based off of the position coach that's recruiting you. Because if they do their job, I want them to move on to bigger positions, to coordinator, position coach to coordinator to head coach. And hopefully, if they're doing their job, that we're developing them so that they're moving on. You're not going to have the same coaches all 4 years, and kind of preparing them mentally. And I thought that was a different take that I hadn't heard. And I think that was a good one to take, especially coming off the fact that we've had 3 coaches in the last couple of years.
I think a lot of coaches now push for that unless you're a psycho. Because they know that if you're able to get assistants pushed to that next level, then you're going to be able to attract the best assistant coaches as possible. But you never know. The one other school, Matt, putting up the old Pat signal, Pitt, right in the middle of the pack where you would expect them. Battling NC State for that 7th spot. And it's like, at what point do you have to just make that jump and say, hey, we've been beating Clemson. We've been doing all this stuff. Why are you recruiting no 4-stars? I think they had 2. Like, at some point, you have to be able to recruit You're in Pitt. They just beat Michigan State, who fell to 42nd. Pitt's at 41 overall.
All right, hold. Before you go any further.
Go ahead. Spin it for me.
Pitt's in a bizarre place. They're in a bizarre place because geographically where they're located, they're in a tough place because they have to compete with Ohio State right now, who's going to cherry pick who they want. They're gonna contend with Penn State in-house. West Virginia's a close shot. And nationally, you got Notre Dame that's in everyone's ear. So you're constantly in competition. And then the thing that I don't get with Pitt is that they keep trying to recruit Florida. You're not going to get Florida. You're not going to pull the quality talent into Pitt. So where do you focus your recruiting at if you're a team like Pitt? You're not keeping the top WPIAL kids. If you kept the WPIAL kids at home, they would be every bit of talent and competition to compete on a blue chip national level. But they're bleeding out to everyone. So you're not getting the blue chips. You're going to get the scab players in competition with IUP and Slippery Rock.
Preach, Matt. I'm sure all the Pitt slappies are loving this. Go ahead, keep talking. Because I'm looking at Maryland. Maryland right now is 27th. And I know they got lucky with that 5-star guy that wanted to stay close to home. So let's say they're in like the high 30s. That's where Pitt should be every year. They should be no lower. Because you're competing, you're winning your division in the ACC, you're upsetting Clemson. At some point, your results have to get you a couple 4-star players, some blue chip recruits. They had 2 this year. I mean, Purdue has 3. Purdue was awful this year. What are they doing putting together that you're going to get out recruited by them?
But the other thing with Pitt is, how can you not get a decent quarterback recruit? Like they had.
Now you're talking about the school that puts the most quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, you're right. They're putting sucky quarterbacks in the NFL.
And that was sarcasm, listeners, because I don't know exactly how many quarterbacks. I just know they've had a lot.
They've had a lot recently. But when you look, DiNucci transferred out and went to James Madison. Pickett's there, and they're not getting anyone into the transfer portal. And it just seems like he's one of the things that's holding them back. Because just like with the Steelers we talked about earlier, inconsistent quarterback play. Same thing with Pickett. He takes predictable sacks at 3rd and 8 that hurts him. Driving the ball down the field to nobody. You get a decent quarterback recruit. Keep one local player home and get him in the system.
I don't know. To me, West Virginia is even ahead of them at 38. It's like West Virginia hasn't been relevant since they joined the Big 12. Like, what have they done? They're kind of like a fish out of water. Their coach left for Houston. He took a demotion. That's how bad West Virginia is right now. And then they're still out recruiting Pitt. It's like, what is going on? It just makes me laugh. So, and I even like Pitt, so I don't even know why I'm laughing, but it's pretty sad.
Well, but the argument that I had with a couple different people is, even if you're Pitt and you're tired of Narduzzi because of one of the biggest knocks on him this year was the way that he game planned around that Penn State game, and kind of like didn't go aggressively enough to try to win when he definitely should have. Even if you're had enough of him, you're like, we need to go a different route. Who do you bring in to coach Pitt, knowing that you're going to struggle to keep the local kids home? I know you always go back to bring Wannstedt back, but I don't even know that would even be A, plausible, and B, a good idea.
Mac Brown. Did you hear me? Mac Brown is third in the ACC. If you bring back Wannstedt, you can't tell me he wouldn't at least be sixth or fifth. Come on, that would be awesome. Mac Brown, is he out recruiting Texas right now? Because that would be hilarious. I didn't actually look that up. I think Texas is pretty high, though. Nah, Texas is ninth, so it doesn't work out. But I have two other points.
Texas is screwed right now because they can't find anyone that wants to go there to coach with what's his face, Herman.
Well, that's because they were having all kind of crazy issues that were brought to light with the Zach Smith scandal. So, like, of course it's a dumpster fire, and I don't even know how they're recruiting so well other than they are in Texas, and Jimbo Fisher, as he picked up the slack, because A&M has been up there in the past years, all they are. So A&M 6th overall. So that's where I'm really surprised that Texas is as high as they are, because you're selling recruits on what? A win against Georgia in a bowl game last year? That's the only thing they have. They lost to Maryland twice. If I was recruiting against them, that's what I would tell them. Like, hey, you guys know that they haven't beat Maryland ever. I think historically, I could be wrong. I think, are they 0-3? I should look that up quick. Because I was like, it's something crazy like that, I think. So if I was recruiting against them, I would bring that up every day because people were like, well, the Big Ten East is so bad. You get to play Maryland and Rutgers every year. Of course, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State have great records. They get 2 easy wins, and then it's like, Texas never beat them. Like, what are you talking about? You can't tell me the Big 12 is a meat grinder. Like, it makes zero sense. Because it's going to set me off. People have been talking about how the Big 12 is great in basketball, too. Because I'm like, Kansas wins every year. How are they great? What team has won a national championship from the Big 12 other than Kansas? If you have one team, your conference is not great. Right now, the Big 12 is just Oklahoma. And yeah, I guess people could say the Big 10 is just Ohio State, but Ohio State has won a national championship in the playoff era. The Big 12 has not. So that's my last rant. I did have one other thing for recruiting. Nebraska, with Scott Frost, is doing surprisingly well for how bad as they've been. They are leading the Big Ten West in recruiting. They're 4th overall. Like, how are they out recruiting Wisconsin that has results on the field? And they have a higher blue chip ratio than them. It's like, what would you be doing, Paul Chryst? I know you left Pitt in like a tizzy. Oh, and of course I'm wrong. Texas holds the overall record against Maryland 3-2. So if Maryland could get them on the schedule 2 more years while Tom Herman's there, they could own that series record. I think they should try to get that done. Maryland AD, if you're listening to this, get that scheduled. Make sure it's there before Tom Herman leaves. Because I want you guys to have the all-time record against Texas. I think that would be funny. But getting back to recruiting on my sidebar. Yeah, Scott Frost. So right now, only 2 teams in the Big Ten. And if you look at 24/7, it might not look like it because Michigan, they have this 13-13, 13 blue chips and 13 non-blue chips. But one of those is a quarterback that got injured. So he's not able to sign with Michigan this year. So right now, Michigan should be 1 ahead in the blue chip ratio. And then the only other team that has a positive blue chip ratio this recruiting class is Ohio State. So everyone else in the Big Ten, it's like, what are you doing? Penn State was -5. Nebraska's -4 in the blue chip ratio. But I'm surprised at how well they're doing because Wisconsin's -11. Wisconsin, you've had a winning record and been in New Year's Six Bowl for like a decade. At some point, you should be able to use that to recruit better. What are you doing? Like, I know you just recruit big guys from Wisconsin and bulk them up, but you got to get some skill players if you want to make that jump. It's pathetic. Everyone else in the Big Ten is way worse than that. So if you're looking for parity,
Scott also, I don't see that being a problem because when he started off coming back to Nebraska, he pretty much came right out and was like, "Look, we're going to suck for a while. We have a bad team," and he came in very humble and just said, "This is a major rebuild, So to see he doesn't have the on-field product, I think you can fall off of his national championship win at UCF to say that he has a process that works, and the people of Nebraska are going to give him time to get his guys in, where it looks like they're progressively making improvements. You know, if they were a knee-jerk school, they could. His record isn't much better than what Taggart's is, and Florida State showed Taggart the door in a hurry.
But Scott Frost also had a national championship in the record books. We talked about that last week, Matt, with the all-time winning percentage. That it's in that PDF. If you find it, search for NCAA record book, and then just search for UCF, and that national championship will come up. It's in the official record book. But just going back, if he can get them to a positive blue chip ratio and get Nebraska to have talent, a lot of people said that's impossible for them to do because of where they're located and not being in the Texas recruiting grounds. I would be impressed because the rest of the Big Ten, they're not getting it done. I mean, hell, even the ACC, counting Florida State, they have 3 teams with the positive blue chip ratio: Clemson, Miami, and Florida State. I know Florida State has a smaller class, but if you have a smaller class, it should be easier to get high guys, and some of those teams just don't have it. So make that jump, Big Ten, if you want to compete on the national level. But that's the last thing.
With that blue chip ratio thing, what I'd like to see is the ratios and how they're affected by transfers and different things like that. To see, like, if you're bringing in a bunch of guys that either weren't ranked or weren't recruited, that should affect the blue chip ratio, and it should affect the class as a whole. But you don't see that reflected when they transfer schools and how that affects across over time. It's like you get your ratio from what you have coming in and where they were. It doesn't show like if they're transferring out or going to other places.
Yeah, but the 24/7 team talent composite does do that. So you're able to just do look at each roster at the beginning of the year. So overall, I mean, just in terms of the talent going into this year, Penn State, Michigan, they're well over it. Ohio State's well over in terms of blue chip ratio, because even though they're signing a lot of those lower guys, most of them either transfer out, and that's where you lose a lot of that attrition. I can just do the Big Ten and the ACC here quick because I have it up. You had Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan are in. Nebraska was a negative 43, Matt, on their talent this year. And, of course, they had an awful season. They would be they're the 4th highest right now with that negative of a score. So you really have the Big 3 in the Big Ten, and that's it. In the ACC, you have Florida State, Clemson, and then Miami's a little bit lower right now. They're negative 3, and then that's it. So you really, in terms of talent, you only have 2 teams, Florida State and Clemson, that have the talent to compete, and I think that's why they let go of Willie Taggart. Because if you have the talent that's comparable, I mean, just looking at the blue chip, it's really – so Florida State was only +1, but they're still over. Clemson was +7. So they're not that far behind in terms of talent on the roster. And then, like I said, Miami was -3, so all right there, able to make that jump. If Scott Frost can get Nebraska from a -43 to single digits, I think that would go a long way to getting them competitive in the national landscape. But that's all I had for recruiting stuff. Bowl season started underway. I think you had, App State won. Not a surprise. They had another big-time winning season. They're one of the ones we talked about last week with all-time winning percentage. They made the jump up to FBS. They're on a trajectory that Boise State's on. I mean, it looks like they're the best team in North Carolina until Mac Brown gets these recruits in, that they're going to be competing for one of the New York 6 auto bids every year, it seems. UCF They won their bowl today, right before we recorded this, I believe. And big news for that, because they're going forward with a brand new coach since Scott Frost came on. They got a 10-win season. That's got to help consistency with recruiting. Buffalo got their first ever bowl win. And I think it goes back to, I think I have the teams right. They were supposed to play Florida State back when they didn't allow African-American players to play. And Florida State said that they weren't allowed to play in the bowl. So Buffalo forfeited. That could have been their only other bowl win. That's a little piece of history for you. But they finally got it done. I don't know what year that would have been. That would have been a long time ago. But any other games stand out to you?
Liberty getting their first ever bowl win.
Well, same with Buffalo. What a great
year. Mortgage Cure Bowl. They beat Georgia Southern 23-16. That was their first bowl appearance and also their first bowl win. So Hugh Freeze getting it done in year one. And they also had a pretty good recruiting class. So onward and upward for Liberty.
Matt, when the money is flowing, other teams are going to be jealous. And Liberty is the one team to watch. Because I know down in the South it makes a lot of people mad when they're successful. But I could see them being on a very App State-like trajectory very soon. Because when you have the money to recruit and you have a big-name coach, even though he was fired, he was able to land gigantic recruiting classes at Ole Miss. And NC had no problem letting him get there. It's only going to be up for Liberty.
Well, and I was surprised to see when Hugh Freeze was hired, to see the previous coach was Turner Gill, who was famously mentioned for a bunch of different jobs, and they're trying to push for him. He was coaching at Buffalo for a while and had success there and juggled around some smaller programs, but he had the program in a good spot for Hugh Freeze to take over. So they're definitely aligning themselves to be competitive for the long haul.
Yeah, they're in a position where if they can take off and they can get some of the 4-star guys away from Virginia and Virginia Tech, I mean, who knows? You're a small school. If you take it and do whatever you're going to be able to do in that area, I mean, take it. You get some money, you got a good coach, arguably better than what Virginia Tech has right now. Virginia, I like Bronco Mendenhall. I think he's going to do good things there. But you're in a lower division, so you can take some of their cast-offs and win at an impressive clip. And I think down here, the reason I hear about it is because of how bad the ECU program has turned. I mean, they fell off a cliff. There was one point where they had Lincoln Riley as the OC. Imagine if they would have promoted him instead of letting him get hired away by Oklahoma. So
they're waiting for me. They're waiting for me to come up. So I'll bring ECU back.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a place where they were able to recruit the Virginia area. What is it called? The Tidewater, where Virginia Beach and all that is, where I think that was where Mike Vick was from. Like Virginia Tech and ECU used to do their heavy recruiting there. It's kind of fallen off. If Liberty can take up and get that area locked down, hell, if I were Pitt, that's where I'd be looking. Up and down that corridor, up through New Jersey. Why not? They let all the other schools pick that away. But yeah, it's something that we'll see what happens. But I think Liberty could be a school that breaks through. And I don't know what's going to happen is if they expand the playoffs and people are talking about keeping those divisions out. For me, I want auto bids from every conference. We talked about it last year. So for new listeners, everyone tells me, well, it's not going to matter. That team's going to get killed. Then let them in. Instead of giving, because I think I saw, was it CBS or something, put together their plan for a real playoff. They gave the top 8 teams buys. Why give them buys? Let them play the champions from these lesser conferences if they really are that bad. Or are you afraid App State might upset Clemson? And then what's that look for the number 1 seed or whatever? Who even is the number one seed? LSU. Like, if App State beat LSU, like, would that somehow hurt the rest of the playoffs and the bowls? Like, I think that would make the ratings explode. If you really think they're that bad, make them play the top seeds. To me, that problem solved. Don't give anyone auto bits or auto buys. I think that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. If you're not going to let every conference in, don't give buys. Or make that make that championship game matter for that lesser conference. Give them an auto bid and see if they can win. That's always been my stance. I think there was one other game here in my notes that I missed. Washington killed Boise State, which to me, after Chris Peterson stepped down, I thought Washington wasn't going to show up at all.
I thought that one, and the other one that shocked me was the SMU FAU one.
Oh, that one too.
I thought for sure I was penciling in SMU, and Florida Atlantic came out and got it done, putting 52 on it.
Yeah, well, if people listened to the show last year, they knew that I won the bull pick'em that we did, and that's one of my strategies, looking to see what coach is left. And those are two big ones that I had penciled in. I know you use the same strategy. When you lose a high-profile coach, it's hard to get pumped up for your bowl game. And for them to come out and just put it on, I know Washington promoted from within, so it made me think maybe that Peterson was pushed out a little bit. Because there's nothing really to show me that. But like,
if they pushed him, I wonder where is he going to go if he wants back in the game.
Well, if Jimmy Lake was going to go to Florida State, Matt, I know that's what we talked about. That was one of the rumors that came out. If Jimmy Lake was honestly being looked at by Florida State, and they thought the only way we're going to be able to keep him is to put it in, then yeah, you're right. Where's Peterson going to go? There had been rumors that some of the Texas schools were looking at him. I mean, I don't know. Is Texas Tech, are they that big of a drop from Washington? They could step up. Arkansas, I don't know if he'd go east. He's always been on the West Coast. Hell, at this point, if Urban goes to the Dallas Cowboys, why not go to USC if you're Peterson? That would be a hell of a hire, because that would immediately give them in grounds to all those recruits that Washington were in on. And now Peterson already has all of those connections on the West Coast and the fertile recruiting grounds of LA. I think that would be a home run hire. But we'll see. They kind of made him like the AD to try to keep him around. You know how they do that sometimes. So, anything else you had for the college bowls?
No, just looking forward to seeing the rest of them. We're off to a good start.
Yeah, some big games, some big upsets. So we'll be queuing back in on these next week whenever I hit on the show. But that about wraps it up. I think we've gone for our normal time. But like I said, we recorded this early. Not 100% sure. What do you got for us, Matt, for the final bell? You got anything?
Final bell. Thankful for upcoming Christmas and New Year's and spending time with family. But just remember, don't overdo your eating, because over half the nation will be obese within 10 years. So don't be one of those people that has a BMI over 35.
Where did you get that stat?
CNN.
Matt, do you really think that they know how fat everyone's going to be within 10 years? I feel like every stat I hear, it's like football is going to be gone within 10 years because of the rate of concussions. And then nothing happens.
I err on the side of caution. Exercise a little bit. I'm trying to be proactive. I'm going to prevent this from happening. Go for a walk. Do some sit-ups.
You know what? I'm going to start wearing one of the new football helmets around just to make sure I don't get CTE in my day-to-day
life. There you
go.
Stand up, walk around your house, and go to southboundsports.com.
I'll get a NASCAR harness in my car. I'll get that input just in case I'm ever in an accident. I don't want to have debilitating it. Yeah, get that. Get a helmet. I think I'll be set. And a bubble so I don't get sick. Does that sound good?
Flame suit.
All right, yeah, check us out, southboundsports.com. Got a new year. kicking off. So going to be hoping to bring some new exciting things to our site. So you can check that out. Make sure you subscribe to the show. We've had a lot of new subscribers this year, so make sure you tell your friends. We're thankful for that.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll be doing one more show. I think it comes out, New Year's Eve, so we probably won't hear until the New Year. So Happy New Year. Celebrate safely, and we will see you next week.